Today, I want to talk to you about something that is kind of annoying, and that is exactly how cheap it is and easy it is to get into the videography world with a crazy good camera for under the $2,000 price point. You see, currently on B&H, the Sony FX30 is on sale for $1,598. And if you don't understand how good of a deal that is, you just don't understand how good of a camera this actually is. I'll keep this part short and to the point. If you're a beginner videographer looking to make money with your camera or work with other creatives in the industry, I 100% recommend making the FX30 your first camera. And if you're already an FX3 user or a Sony shooter looking for a B or C camera, you should also make the Sony FX30 your next choice. Anyways, what's up everybody? My name is Ross Barnett, and after the last 7 years as a full-time videographer, I am finally starting to create content for YouTube. I'm pretty new to this whole YouTube thing, and I've set a lofty goal to reach 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2023. It's a stretch, especially being that I've only been on the platform for less than a month, but I definitely think I have some educational content to offer. So if you're wanting to come along for the ride, I'd love to have you. The FX30 is just an incredible deal for all you get out of it. Let's start with this camera. For example, this is my Sony A7S III. It's my go-to camera for all things right now. And when originally purchased in October of 2020, I paid $3,500 for this camera. Things were serious and the business was growing, so we purchased 3 of them for the grand total price of $10,500. Just saying that number out loud makes me kind of shiver a little bit. A single A7S is well over twice the price of this guy, which is the Sony FX30. And while these cameras do have some major differences that do affect the image quality, I'll let you decide if it's worth the additional $2,000 to upgrade to something like the A7S or the FX3. A little side note, I primarily shoot on the Sony A7S camera, and I have a couple of them and they are phenomenal. But for the sake of this review, it's important to know that the Sony A7S III and the FX3 are essentially the same camera when it comes to the sensor and the image quality inside. The FX3 was released about 6 months after the A7S, after we had already purchased 3 A7S cameras. So we're still sticking with the A7S III due to the fact that the image isn't any different out of the FX3, and we have far too much invested into the A7S line to sell in exchange for any FX3s. So let's first talk about the lens selection and how the vast majority of lenses offered for the FX30 might be a downside in the long run. You see, if you're getting an FX30, there are a ton of inexpensive APS-C lenses out there ready for you to purchase. The lens selection for Sony cameras is a reason to purchase in itself, but you still need to plan ahead and take the APS-C lenses as they come. You see, if you plan on to go full frame anytime in the future, you have to keep in mind that your APS-C lenses that fit your FX30 will not work with a lot of the Sony full frame cameras, like the FX3 and A7S. Yes, there are always ways to shoot in APS-C mode if you're in a pinch, but cropping into the sensor doesn't give you the best results. So keep that in mind when purchasing your vast amount of APS-C lenses for your Sony FX30. They won't follow you all the way through your career unless you plan to stay on Sony crop sensor cameras forever. When it comes to the A7S III and FX3, the main thing that keeps these cameras in another tax bracket is the full frame sensor plus the 12,800 base ISO. And when you say that the only difference is the sensor size, going from APS-C to full frame, it doesn't really sound like a $2,000 upgrade, in my opinion. And I'm here to say that it's kind of not. In the proper lighting situations, the image will almost always look identical, and the only difference that you'll notice is when you're shooting a live event where you don't have full control of your lighting. Shooting in low light with an FX30 and A7S III is definitely noticeable, especially since the FX30 has a native ISO at 2500 when compared to the A7S's native ISO at 12,800. So that's essentially the biggest difference that I've noticed when shooting with both cameras and editing with both cameras in the same atmosphere. The only difference that we've had is the limitations with the FX30 in low light scenarios. As a primarily wedding videographer, I encourage all videographers who are just starting out to purchase an FX30 as one of their first cameras. It's really just that good. And a lot of the differences you'll see out of the more expensive big brothers like the FX3 and the A7S III really come down to the few limitations with the FX30's crop sensor size. But I'll let you be the judge there. Do you notice the difference in the footage? Or should I say, is the difference in the footage worth the $2,000 price increase to you? For us, if we have an A7S available, it's definitely getting used. But the way these FX30s handle color and all the other things that they do, they can definitely pass for a lead camera with our current workflow. And that's mainly because we shoot live events where we can never fully have full control of the lighting or how dark of an area we'll be in. So if you're filming in a studio space or always have outdoor daylight, or filming product videography or food videography where you have full control of your lighting always, the FX30 just makes way more sense these days because the limitations aren't really limitations with your work. However, because of the small limitations with low light, we'll always grab the A7S first before busting out the FX30, just in case we run into a situation where we need the extra light. So that's about all I have for you today, discussing the main differences I see daily with working with the FX30 and the A7S III. I'll say this again, the amount of value that you receive out of the FX30 for the $1,500 price point is absolutely ridiculous. And if you're a Sony shooter looking for your first camera, or you're looking for a B or C camera, or just to get an additional camera for your workflow, it is definitely a no-brainer. So if you've learned anything at all from this video, I'd appreciate the subscribe. We are on a mission here to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of 2023, and we're currently just under a third of the way there. So I'd love to have you along for the ride. We'll see you on the next one. See ya.